Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's course of deep learning. So today we'll have our theory lecture, and that will be taken by Padmavati ma'am. Ma'am, I have given you the right so that you can start with the session. Hello, ma'am, am I audible to you? Anybody else who can respond in the chat window if I am audible or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, I think ma'am cannot hear me or something. There is some issue with her. I'll call and get it from her. What's the issue about that? Ma'am, am I audible to you now?
Yes, you are very much audible.
Okay.
Am I audible clearly?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Shall we start, Sakshi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, visible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's start the next topic. Today's is our theory-wise, it's sixth session. We have discussed enough about activation functions, and we know activation functions we need to introduce in hidden layers and output layers. Every pre-activation layer, in every neuron, we'll have two types of functions. One is pre-activation, the other one is activation function, right? And these activation functions are there in hidden as well as output layers. Now, the question here is, we have enough studied, discussed in detail about the various types of activation functions which are available. Again, there are a few more activation functions which I haven't covered. For example, there are n number of variants which are available for ReLU activation function. So you all can go and check up what are the different variants that, which have been introduced recently. Okay, for example, leaky ReLU is there, so you can check how leaky ReLU is different from the ReLU activation function. Okay, so we have covered almost basic activation functions which are required. Once we did that, now we need to select the correct activation function. So here, how do I select the correct activation function? It can be selected based on the problem statement. Okay, so we need to be much aware of the problem, details of the problem, what we need, or what kind of output that my problem demands. So based on that, I need to select the activation function. Let's say, for example, in hidden layer, mostly we do go for TANH and ReLU activation function. We do use ReLU and TANH activation function. And if I compare TANH and ReLU, mostly nowadays ReLU activation function being used by most of the researchers. Again, why we are using ReLU activation function, or why it is being used mostly? Because of its characteristics, right? So again, in terms of output layer, in output layer, in case I want to perform some kind of binary classification, okay, then what I need to do is in binary classification, only two types of values are possible. One is either 0 or 1. My ground truth values are also 0 and 1, as well as my predicted values are also 0 to 1. Okay, so here for binary classification, I simply use sigmoid function. Whereas in case of multi-class classification, for example, I need instead of dividing or categorizing into two classes, if I want to categorize my problem in 3 different classes or n number of classes, for example, MNIST digit classification, maybe in coming practical sessions you will be doing that MNIST classification. So there you need to do you need to categorize the problem on 10 based on 10 different classes, because we do have 10 different digits which are associated with the MNIST digit classification. Okay, so I need to classify from 0 to 9. Hence, total number of categories which are required are 10. Right? So in case of multi-class classification, I will be using softmax function as my activation function at the output layer. Again, now sigmoid and softmax function we do use in case of classification. What if my problem demands some kind of regression? Okay, regression problems. We need to find out the price of some product based on some characteristics of that product. Okay, so in that case, what we need to do is, in those cases, I will be using linear function, because there is no foundation on the output that it is generating. Correct. So what I need to do is I just want whatever output it has generated till pre-activation layer. So what linear function does is it simply passes that particular value to the as an output layer, because as such there is no bounding or limitation in terms of values in regression problems. As such, I can represent in any number, okay, any value. For that sake, linear function can be used in case of regression problem. Now, again, once we did about, we have completed about activation function, and how do I select based on the given problem, how do I select the loss function, how do I select the activation function? Once we complete that, then one must also be aware of using different kind of loss functions which are available. Okay, the main loss functions are these two. The first loss function is cross entropy, which is basically used for classification purpose. Okay, here I will use this particular formula to compute the loss using cross entropy, which says that it is just summation over I number of classes. Okay, so in that particular case, P here is the true label, whereas Q here is the predicted label. Okay, and how do I compute the loss? The total loss can be computed by using this particular formula, that is Pi into log of Qi, and I just sum over n number of examples, n number of classes that I want to categorize. Okay, I do take that sum and it will produce me the total loss for the given problem. Okay, this cross entropy I do use for in case of classification problem. Similarly, which loss function is used in case of regression problems? For regression problem, we have discussed this mean squared error loss function. Okay, that again I have not written here the formula, because in detail we have discussed. it is same as yi minus yi hat, where yi is my actual value and y hat is my label, sorry, predicted value. Correct? So true value minus predicted value whole square. So summation of that I will take for regression kind of problems. Now let us discuss about parameters and parameters versus hyperparameters. Okay. By this time we all are very well aware of the term parameters. Now today's class we will discuss what is hyperparameters and what is the role of hyperparameters in learning process. Parameters are these two, okay, weight and biases. Here we know at the end what we need to do is we need to learn the weight and bias values such that the end result, okay, or you can say the predicted value should be as close as the actual value. That means I want to find out all the hidden representation of the given sample set, okay, of the given data, such that my weight is my predicted values of my model is same as my actual value. Okay, so this is the learning process. Okay, so in this particular learning process, W and B we initialized it randomly, but in each step we try to adjust the parameter values such that loss at the previous step is less than the loss at the current step. Similarly, loss at the current step should be loss at the next step should be less than the loss at the current step. Fine. So this we have discussed while dealing backpropagation as well. Let us take hyperparameters. What is hyperparameters? Based on these hyperparameters, the final values of B and W are determined. Okay, so now if I change the value of W and B to some extent, we know if I just fine tune, okay, tune the weight values, forget about the biases for now, consider weight values. Now let us say we are taking weights, okay, weight values. In this particular weight values, let us consider that we have computed some loss. Using this current weights, we have computed some loss. And in the next step, okay, what we do again in backpropagation, we try to adjust the parameter value such that we try to adjust the W value such that the loss at the current step should be less than the loss at the previous step. Fine. So now the problem here is when we consider the weight value, previously we considered some weight value, and suppose we are not doing it systematically. That means we are not doing that derivatives based on derivatives. I am not following the backpropagation algorithm or gradient descent algorithm to reduce the loss. Okay, suppose randomly I'm initializing each time. Initially I initialized with some weight value. I got some loss. Again I will change the weight value and I got some other loss. Okay, suppose initially I do initialize my weight values to 0.2. My loss is 0.5. In the next step, I take weight value instead of for computing the derivative and finding it systematically. I randomly changed my weight value to 0.5. This time, all of a sudden, it has increased to 0.9. My loss has increased to 0.9. So what I need to do is, no, I should consider the previous weight values, correct? So why I should consider the previous weight values and not current weight value? Because current weight value is giving me a very high loss value as compared to the previous weights. Okay, this example we have considered just for assumption. I asked you to assume. Otherwise, systematically we do compute the weight values, or I mean to say we do adjust the parameter values such that in each iteration we try to get reduced and reduced weight values. But to some extent, just for assumption, I asked you to assume that, just for illustration, I asked you to assume that initially we took weight value as 0.2 and my loss was 0.5, suppose. And later on, I initialized weight value as 0.5 and this time my loss is 0.9. Now I can easily say, after looking at two different weight values for the same problem, I can say that with 0.2 it was giving 0.5 loss value, whereas with 0.5 it is giving 0.9 as loss value. Okay, so I can easily say with this illustration that weight with 0.2 is much better than weights which are assigned with values 0.5. Okay, so in this example we have changed just by 0.3. Okay, from 0.2 to 0.5 I've changed weight values, and by changing this my weight value has increased, correct, from 0.5 to 0.9. So now the hyperparameters are the parameters. Based on these hyperparameters, if you change a little values, okay, if you change very minute values in this hyperparameters, the final values are going to be changed drastically. Okay, so here we need to choose hyperparameter in such a way that we need to determine W and B in very less number of iterations. Okay, one of the hyperparameters I can say is the learning rate, or we do represent learning rate as alpha. Okay, symbol alpha is representing learning rate. The next one is number of hidden layers. Yes, this is also one of the important hyperparameters we can consider, and you yourself will do it practically in your practical sessions, and you will check if you change learning rate, how my weight values and B are going to change. If I change a little bit the number of hidden layers, how it is going to affect the output. Even number of neurons in each layer. Okay, so the next one can be selection of activation function. The next one is number of iteration, how many times I'm executing it. Okay, and very important step, that is batch size. Batch size I haven't covered. What is batch size we will discuss in today's class. Okay, just don't worry about it. So there are a few more hyperparameters which I haven't covered at, so I haven't listed, but there are few more hyperparameters. In upcoming sessions we will discuss all those hyperparameters in detail, right? So let us discuss. Am I audible? Okay, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Let's see. Let's see about the hyperparameters. Okay. As we have discussed about backpropagation algorithm, in backpropagation algorithm, I have we have already used learning rate in the equation. At that time, I asked you to assume some learning rate value as 0.2, 0.1, 0.01, and so on. But let us check how it changes. How do I change the learning rate? Okay, or with what value I should initialize the learning rate. Fine. How does it affect in learning the parameter values? Let's see that. I hope this is clear. Now, this graph is clear. What we have done, on x-axis, we have taken some parameters. Okay. And on y-axis, we have considered the cost. Cost term may be new to you, but cost is same as the loss function. The only difference between loss function and the cost function is loss function I do compute for every sample. Okay. Whereas cost function, I do take average of that loss function over the iteration. Fine. So cost function is nothing but average of the loss function. If I have done for m number of samples, then I take the loss values. Suppose I have computed for 5 different samples. I've computed the loss value. Then cost function, how do I compute? I simply take average of all those 5 loss functions. Okay, suppose I've computed that cost function, and I have just simply I just want to simply illustrate how this cost is going to reduce with when I try to or in the learning process. Okay, the graph itself is indicating how the cost is going to reduce with respect to learning process, initialized with some random value. Here theta is parameter vector. Now this theta, assume it as W. Okay, this theta can be n number of parameters. Just for illustration, assume theta is just one parameter, that is W1. Okay, and I'm trying to just check or draw some graph based on cost value that I get versus some parameter value that I initialize. Okay. On x-axis, I'm just initializing some parameter values, W1, and I'm adjusting in each iteration. Whereas on y-axis, I have the cost which is associated with it. For example, I initialize W1 with this particular random initial value. Okay, this value can be anything. You just assume that I have initialized some W and I have computed the loss. Okay, or cost function I've considered for those 5 different samples, and I got this much cost. Okay, I got this much cost. So now, as I have not reached the cost is not 0, so I need to iterate through those steps: forward propagation, backward propagation. In backward propagation, what are we trying to do? We are trying to compute the derivative at that particular point, and I do take alpha times of that derivative at that particular point, and I do subtract w minus w of alpha times that d of derivative of function over dw1. Okay, when I do that, earlier when I initialized with this random value, I got the cost function as this. In the next step, after that gradient descent algorithm, okay, when I execute that back propagation, what happens? My cost got reduced. Okay, and how it has got reduced based on the same formula that we discussed. W is equals to W minus alpha times derivative of some function with respect to dw1. Okay, so my cost function has got reduced after updating the W value from this randomized value with this particular value. Next time, again, check with this particular W value, do the forward propagation, and you will get some cost, and that cost is not minima. Here minima can be 0 or any some loss which is fine with you. Okay, which is bearable. So if you have reached to that extent, then fine. Otherwise, again, you need to update the parameter values. Okay. So again and again, you are going to repeat the steps to reach this particular point. Once you reach this particular point, that means when you have initialized with W values to this, then you can easily say that you have reached the global minima value. Okay. Now, how does learning rate affect the affect in reducing or in reaching this global minima value from this particular point? How do I reach to this? how this learning rate is going to help to us. See, if the learning rate is too small, then algorithm will have to go through n number of many iteration. N is very large. Okay, n number of iterations to converge. Convergence means we have already seen the term as convergence. Okay, the convergence here means once we do reach the desired output. Okay, here my desired result is when I get the loss function as 0 or some variable value. Okay, so if the learning rate is too small, then the algorithm will have to go through many iterations to converge, which will take a long time. We all know when we do when I try to update, suppose I've started with this particular parameter value W, and if I change W very small, and I'm checking how much my cost is going to reduce. So if you're changing from 0.2 to 0.20001, so again we can easily say that to reach to this particular point, it will take n maximum number of iteration. It needs many iterations, right? So for that sake, we always prefer not to choose too small value, too small learning rate. Okay, if I choose too small learning rate, you are seeing the effect. What happens? It takes a longer time. Okay, now if the learning rate, okay, that is, instead of taking small values, if I take higher values, then what happens? If the learning rate is too high, you might jump across the valley and end up on other side, possibly even higher up than you were before. So here you have started with this particular value, that is W naught, and you have computed some cost. That cost is this, correct? And now what if my learning rate is high? If my learning rate is high, if previously I was moving from this, I was trying to converge from this to this, or I can say I'm able to reduce the cost from this point to this particular point. To some extent, I was able to reduce. But if learning rate itself is very high, then what my that updation will do? My updation will do such that my W value, when I started with this, when I do that W minus W of alpha into derivative of function over W1, when you do that, you will jump directly to this particular position. Again, as my learning rate is high, so again you will reach to this particular point. So here the concept here is when my learning rate is too high, okay, you will try to diverge instead of converge to global minima. Okay, so hence my learning rate should not be, I should not assume too low value. If we assume too low value, we have seen what is the disadvantage. The disadvantage, definitely we are going to converge, but that convergence time will be very high. But here the problem, when you take learning rate as too high, then I can see that instead of converging, we do start getting the divergence effect, right? Now, let us move to next section, that is batch, mini batch, and stochastic gradient descent. All these terms you need to be aware and you need to learn as we all are going to use these in the practical sessions. Okay. For this, let us try to understand what is one epoch means. One epoch means one pass over the entire data. Okay. One step means one update of the parameters. In one epoch, we can have n number of we can have one update, we can have n number of updates as well. We will see how. when we will get one update, when we will get a number of updates. But minimum is in one epoch, we will do at least one update. Let us see. In batch gradient descent, what we have is we do have, we need to select number of iteration. Here iteration means the epoch only. Okay. In each iteration, I do compute and add the gradient for all the data points. Okay. So once in each iteration, when you do this, compute and add the gradients for all the data points, and you will use this particular gradient value, okay, to update the parameters. Getting it? So when I do this, first we do forward propagation. Once we do forward propagation, what we need to do? We need to check the loss value. Once we getting the higher loss value as compared to the higher loss value, that means it is not zero. In that case, what we need to do is we need to, we all know that we need to back propagate that error back, because error is very high. If error is zero, no need to back propagate. We have done with, or we have achieved the result. But if error is not zero or minimum error, then I need to back propagate that minimum error, or sorry, that I need to back propagate that whatever error that I'm getting back towards the network. Correct? Once I do back propagate the values in the network, what happens? I need to update the parameters. How do I update the parameter? I need to compute the gradient first. So here, the process here in batch gradient descent, what we are doing is in each iteration, we do compute that gradients, derivatives, and once we compute derivatives for all different data points, then what we need to do is we need to update the parameters. Correct? So updation is done based on this equation. Fine. W1 here, this is eta is my learning rate. Fine. Now, okay, before moving, the details if I discuss or the drawback if I discuss with respect to batch gradient descent, the only drawback here is we are doing only single update after scanning so many sample data points. Correct? I need to scan the entire data point and later on I am doing single update. Whereas in stochastic gradient descent, in each iteration, I do compute and add the gradients for single data point. Okay. Here it should be single. So randomly I'm picking the I'm picking the data point and I will check the loss. If the loss is high, then what I will do is I will simply use gradient over that particular, I will compute the gradient for that single point and I will update the parameter based only on that single point. Okay. Here the updates are faster because with respect to each data point, I'm computing the update. Okay. So updates are going to be very fast. Suppose in the previous case, suppose if we have a data set comprising of 100 items, data items, or 100 samples, right? That data set has 100 samples. Then if I apply batch gradient descent, if I apply this batch gradient descent, what happens? I do compute gradient for all these 100 data points. And later on, I do keep adding all the gradients for each of the data points. And once we have scanned all 100 data points, I will update the parameter only once, right? So here we are scanning entire data set and I'm updating the parameter. Whereas in the given 100 data set, I will pick one one data point, and I will compute the loss. If loss is high, then what I will do is I will update the parameter. Again, based on gradient, whatever, compute the gradient, and based on the given formula, you need to, based on this particular formula, you need to update the parameter. Again, I will choose the next gradient, next point. Again, I will do it. Again, I will choose the next gradient. Again, I will update. Hence, updates are faster. Okay. In one iteration, we are performing many updates. Okay, so how fast it is, it depends on number of data points that we have. Okay, but here I'm saying oscillations are very high, right? Here it will not give the smoother loss or smoother values, cost values. Instead, it feels like for some data point, it drags towards the other direction. If I take the second data point, it drags, when I update, it drags towards the some other direction, right? So here we are going to converge. Definitely we will reach we will reach near to global minima. But the problem here is, as we are doing updates based on every single point, different updates are taking place. So based on those updates, my curve is not smoother. Okay, or my whatever I'm reaching towards the convergence, my convergence graph is not smoother. My convergence graph will have many oscillations. So instead of, we have seen in previous gradient descent, batch gradient descent, or most author they do simply say it as gradient descent. In that algorithm, if we apply, it takes time for single update. Okay, whereas in stochastic gradient descent, we are doing updates with each single data point. So we are doing updates very quickly. Okay, what if instead of taking one single data point and doing update, or instead of taking all n data points and doing update, instead of these two, if we have intermediate value, that means stochastic gradient descent is taking one data item for the update, whereas gradient descent is taking n data items for the update. So instead of these two, low value or high value, instead of these two, if we take any value in between, in that case I can easily say that if we assume that, then my updates will be, definitely they are not so many as my stochastic gradient descent, but my the number of oscillations which we are getting during stochastic gradient descent, we will not get so many oscillations. My curve will be smoother, right? And again, if I compare to gradient descent, there we were doing single update at each time. But here, because we are considering in between, nor we are taking n data points for update, nor we are taking single data point update. If I take single data point update, we are getting high as oscillations. If I taking n number of data points and computing gradient and updating the parameters, then we can easily say that the updates are taking very, very slow. So instead of those, we do go for this, that is mini batch gradient descent. So what I will do is, I will simply divide my entire data into n number of mini batches. Okay, and in each iteration, compute and add gradient for batch of data point. In the first case, we are doing for full data set. In the second case, stochastic gradient descent, we are computing gradient only for single item, and we are updating. Whereas in this case, we do compute and add the gradient for batch of data point, mini batches, whatever we have considered. So I will consider each batch once, and I do update the gradient. I do compute the gradient and update the parameters. So updates are faster, and in one iteration, many updates will take place. How many updates it takes place? Again, it depends on the number of data points in each batch. Okay. And definitely this is the advantage over stochastic gradient descent. That means oscillations are less as compared to stochastic gradient descent. Let us see quickly what are advantage and disadvantage of each of these approaches. In the first one, that is batch gradient descent, I need to scan the entire data set for each update. We have seen already, which is computationally expensive. Why it is computationally expensive? Because I need to scan entire data item just for single update. Again, I need to scan entire data item for single update, right? So it also slows on very large training set. If we have large training set, we know single update is going to take place it is going to take much time. And if I consider many many iterations, then it is going to take very high time. Okay. So batch gradient descents are, it is not preferred. Why it is not preferred? Because it is computationally expensive to perform this computation. In stochastic gradient descent, computes updates on each data instance. It takes random or noisy steps, but reaches towards the global minima. It reaches towards the global minimum, that is for sure. But there will exist some oscillation, because one data item gradient, one data item will tell, yes, based on the first data item that we have picked, and that data item has has a loss. Definitely there will be some loss when we compute it, and based only on that observation, single observation, we are trying to update. So it will drag me somewhere else in some other direction. Okay, maybe away from my global minima. But again, I may have some other data point, and in the second data point, it, instead of taking in the same direction as the previous one, this time my loss may take place. Again, loss may take place when I update the parameter, and that this time updating the parameter may take place in a different direction. So it takes random and noisy steps, but it reaches towards the global minima. It is very efficient for large data set, because we know if I apply batch gradient descent, it is entirely very difficult task just to process single iteration. If we have millions and trillions of data points in my data set, then it takes too high time. Okay. The only disadvantage is we may not get the convergence at the global minima. Definitely we will move towards the, or we will be very near to global minima. Mini batch gradient descent, here I just illustrated with an example. Suppose I have these many data points, and in each batch we have 100 examples. Then how many total mini batches that it will generate, or how many mini batches that we are going to process, which will be 100. Let us try to understand the number of updates that is going to take place in each different cases. Theoretically, we have seen, just let us try to illustrate or compare, right? Number of updates in one epoch will be 1. In case of batch gradient descent, because I will go through all data points, I will scan entire data points, compute the gradient for all, add all the gradient values, and then update. So single update for will takes place in each iteration. In stochastic gradient descent, because I will pick the grade, I will take this data point, check the loss, compute the gradient. Later on, after computing it, update the parameter. Take the next one, compute the same process. So how many how many number of updates will take place in one epoch or iteration? It will be n, because n number of updates we are going to perform, correct? Whereas in mini batch gradient descent, I will be using this particular formula, right? Because my data points, total samples have been divided into number of batches. So in each batch, it depends how many number of batch size, or what is a batch size. So how do I check how many updates I will be doing? I will be doing n upon batch size. Okay, batch size is nothing but how many data items in each batch. Okay, so if I do total number of data points upon batch size, it gives me number of updates that I am going to perform in each epoch or iteration. Scans, you know very well now. Now I need to, in each iteration or in each epoch, I need to perform all n data points. So with this I have represented with respect to update. Okay, all n data points, and later on perform the update. In this, I will take one data item and update it. Next data item and update it. Update the parameter value. Whereas here it depends on the sample size. Okay. Now let us look at the terms generalization, overfitting, and underfitting. What is generalization? Generalization is once we have built the model based on my training data. Okay. As we do have training data with us, we try to use that particular training data to build a given model. Later on, I do try to perform the prediction, how my model will give the prediction, or how it gives the result for new or unseen data. New or unseen data is the one which has the model which has not seen. Okay, the model has not seen the data. So here we do call the unseen data is nothing but the test data. During training, the model has only seen the training data and it has updated the parameter values, and it has come up with some hidden representation of my model. Okay. Now, during testing, what I do is I do test on the data which has not seen by the model. If we give the training data for test, definitely I do get good accuracy, correct? But if I give unseen data or the data which has not been seen by my model, then it is very much clear that I will be getting I may get lower accuracy, because this particular data may not be exactly same as training data. Okay, definitely some hidden characteristics are same. Okay, for that sake only I've chosen this unseen data to check the test or to check the model's performance. Fine. So what is the expectation from the model? The model should predict accurately on the unseen data as well. If my model is providing or giving the prediction with good accuracy on the unseen data, that means while training it has not seen that kind of data, then we say it as that particular model is generalized model. Okay, it is giving the good result even if the data has not been seen by the model during the training. Okay. Characteristics of the training and test data common. Okay, they are very much common, right? Characteristics here is the type of data. Okay, the data is if we are taking for house prediction, if we are taking we have trained the data for giving the house prediction value. If we have trained the model based on some data, and we are going to perform prediction based on similar kind of data, right? Suppose a number of features were 3. For example, if what is the size of the house? Okay, what is the size of the house? What are the number of like you can say what are the number of how many bedrooms that house comprises of, and so on. So this training data and this unseen data will have similar kind of features, right? So that's what we are saying here. Characteristics of training data and test data common, then why the model provides, why is always the model provides the accurate results? It may not be true all the times. Okay, so what to do? What is the solution? The solution is to build the complex model. Okay, so my model should be complex enough to make the generalizable results. Okay, let us see the next term, that is overfitting. When mostly you might have heard by the authors or researchers who are doing research in deep learning, they do use this overfitting term, more commonly used term as overfitting. Okay, so what is overfitting? Overfitting occurs when you fit a model which is too closely to the particularities of the training set and obtain a model that works well on the training set but is not able to generalize to new data. Okay, just we have seen what is generalization. Generalization is definitely my built model works very well on the training data because it has seen it during training and it has adjusted the parameters such that it should always give good result or minimum loss when we give the training data, right? But we have also seen the characteristics of generalization. Generalization means it should give good results on the unseen data as well. But here overfitting means it gives very good results on the training data. My model is giving very good results on the training data, but it is not happening with the test data or the data which has not been seen by the model. Okay, that means my model is not generalized one. Okay, it is giving the good result only on the data which has seen, which it has seen, but it is not giving the good results for those data points which it has not seen. Fine. So I can say I'm not or my model is not able to generalize on the new data. So this problem is nothing but the overfitting. Okay, the next term is nothing but underfitting. Why this overfitting occurs? Before moving to the next slide, why this occurs? Whenever my model has learned completely on the training set, it has learned fully on the training set. It is able to give 100% accuracy on the training set, but it is not giving good accuracy on the data which is not being seen by the test result, right? Whereas underfitting is, even for training data, my model is not learned it properly. That means even for the training data, I am not getting good accuracy. Okay, why it happens? Why this underfitting happens? Underfitting is happening because I may be choosing a simplest model, okay, for building. So for that sake, it is giving the problem. Fine. Suppose if we take overfitting problem, then why overfitting occurs? By this definition only you can predict the answer. Yes, it happens because when we choose too complex model to fit all my entire training data. Okay, so during training I'm trying to build a complex model such that my entire training data will give good accuracy. Okay, so that is nothing but overfitting. Or why overfitting is occurring? Because it has overly, the name itself suggests it has overly fitted on the training data. That means entirely all data points have been fitted correctly on my training data. Whereas in this underfitting, it is not the same as the overfitting, because here in this we are trying to choose the too simple model such that we have chosen such a simple model that my model is not giving good accuracy on the training data itself. Okay, that means my model has not learned on for the training data. Forget about the generalizing it. So that is nothing but underfitting. Now, the problem here is we should be very careful while choosing the model. Okay, I should build the model such that my model should not be too complex or my model should not be too simple. If I select the model too simple, what happens? Underfitting will occur. My model may not learn completely the training data. Whereas if I choose the overfitting or too complex model, okay, for training, then what happens? It has learned completely for that particular training set. Correct? It is not able to generalize it, but it has completely learned the training set. Hence, I should not choose the too simple model or I should not choose the too complex model. So what is the solution? The solution is it should be intermediate. The model shouldn't be too complex, not too simple. That means we should see the model in between. Okay, moderate. It should be complex, but it should not be too complex. Right? So let us move to some more terms which most of the authors they do use. Okay, so let us read or let us try to discuss those terms. Okay, the two terms are bias versus variance trade-off. Okay, let us try to discuss what is bias first, and later on let us try to discuss what is variance, and later on we will discuss the comparison. Okay, what is bias versus variance trade-off? Okay, suppose I have few data points. Okay, the data points are sample data points, and if I want to perform the prediction? So to perform the prediction, I have selected very simple model. Suppose I have selected very simple model such that there exists only one parameter, that is W1. Fine. For example, very simplest model I can say the simple model is taking okay. I will try to build a model such that I will try to build two different models. One is simple model, the other one is complex model. We will see pros and cons of building simple model and as well as complex model. I mean, what is simple model? I mean, I do try to learn the or do the training based only on this simple formula, simple equation, and considering only one parameter, W1. Whereas in this complex model, I do use, suppose 8, okay, plus some terms, bias terms. So in this particular case, let's take this. So what I'm trying to do, how many points I'm trying to take, how many parameters I'm trying to consider. Here, I'm considering only one parameter, correct? But here in this example, in this particular example, the one which I have referred it as complex model, in this particular example, I'm going to consider these many parameters. just to learn this particular example, I do have some data points across, okay, and forget about this curve that I have joined all the data points, and also forget about this line at this moment. You just imagine I have been given some data points and I need to build the model, and for simplicity I just want to build two models. One is very simple model I want to build with single parameter, and the second one I want to build this complex model with so many parameters. Okay, and this is wi into xi square. So it takes summation of w1 x1 square plus w2 x2 square and so on. Okay, you can consider, because only x1 is there, so you can consider wi into x1 square, w1 into x1 square plus w2 into x2 square and so on. So how many w's will be there for this particular models? These many w's will be there to learn. Fine. So let us come back. We do have two different, I do have some sample data points, and I do have, I just want to build two different model. One is very simplest model. The other one is bit complex, or it is complex as compared to this model. Hence we can consider it as complex, right? Now what happens? Now we have built the model such that my model is giving this result. Okay, the line is representing the simple model result, whereas the graph is representing the complex result. Correct? So you can very well see when you choose, when you have built the model using this particular simplest model, okay, w1x plus b, then you can simply say that it is not giving good result for these training data points. Okay, it is because there is only one parameter to learn. So based on one parameter, it has simply drawn the line like this. Okay, when you draw a line like this, so average of the loss, actual value is here, but what you are getting for this data point, for this particular data point, first data point, actual value or actual y is over here, but actual y is over here. Actual y is over here. Okay, this y for this particular first data point. Okay, but based on your model, you will get this y. So this is your error for the first data point. This is my error for the first data point. For the second data point, for this particular data point, actual is this, whereas the predicted is this. So you will get this much error. For the third, similarly for the third, actual is no. This is the third data point, right? For this is the third data point, actual y is this. Actual y is this, but you will get prediction over here on this particular line. So this is this much error you will get. So here in simple model, you can say even for my training data point, based on some values, w values, it has tried to learn or try to adjust the parameter value such that this loss value, okay, for all the data point is minimum. This is minimum. Fine, this is minimum. But if you choose suppose I choose my predicted line over here, okay, or I choose predicted line over here, then you can say the loss when your simple model has predicted, okay, when you take average of all these will be very less if you could have selected this particular model. Why? Because you know for these data point also actual values are this, but you are getting very high. For these two data points you may get very small error, but for rest of the data points, for example this and this data point, you'll get very high error rate. Correct? Similarly, when you choose this as my simple model, predicted model, and for these three, this time it may give very least error, but because I need to take the average of all data of all training data points, so data point for this point, this point, this will be, the error rate will be very high. Correct? The error rate will be very high when you take this as my simple. So what it does actually is it tries all possible combination of by drawing the line, and it checks the error. So but for this particular blue earlier version of line gives the minimum error, hence it has kept that particular value, that particular line, okay, for the simple model. For example, if I draw a few data points and I do run based on that W1x plus B, then my model will predict the adjust the parameters such that my model gives some predicted result for each given data points. Definitely this error is there for the given data points because this model, the model itself we have chosen is very simple. Hence there will exist an error. Whereas this is the data, this is the curve which is representing the complex model, that is Wi into x square. Okay, W1 x square plus W2 x square and so on. So you can see my model, complex model has learned very well for training data. This is why I say that it is able to give good accuracy, no error rate at all, because this particular model has provided, or I can say this particular model, what it has done is it has tried to cover all the data points. Fine. Why it has covered, or why the result is so strong for the training data points? Because it has learned uh, between the relationship between x and y such that based on different or n number of parameters it has learned. Okay, so for that sake, all the data points have been checked it correctly by my complex model. But here there will be some issue when we test it. Okay, how? Suppose, okay, before that, let me cover the next few slides and later on I will explain. Let us discuss about bias and variance trade-off. Okay, we have just seen how my model will give the result for when I select the simple model and how it will give the result when I choose the complex model. Okay. Suppose I do have some data points like this. Okay. I have some data, I've selected some data points, and based on these data points, based on suppose first based on some 10 data points. Let me take, this may not be clearly visible. Let me take an example. Okay. Now, based on my these many points, I try to train the model, my simple model again. Then what it will be, it may give this particular line. so that my summation, if I take the average, the loss and the predicted, this average plus this sum plus this. When I take the difference between actual and the actual and the predicted, okay, if I take summation of for all different data points, for this data point, for this data points, okay, if I take the difference between predicted and actual, then this particular line which my model has given, okay, is getting the least error. Fine. So what it will generate is, it will generate a line like this. Fine. Now I take next few data points. This time, definitely from the same sample, I have selected this data point. This time for these data point, the one I've represented with small circles, my data, my model may predict or give the line like this. Fine. Now again, a small dots again takes few more samples, and again only for these samples let us train based on again that simple model W1X. This time when I create the model, my model may give this prediction. So you can see the first one, the second one, and the third one. They are not varying much. They are much closer to each other. Fine. Though this all three lines, you can see here, all these three lines, even here I wanted to show these three lines have been generated for different set of data points. Okay, like this. One is for star, the other one is for circle, and the other one is for some simple dots. Fine. So we are able to generate three different lines, right? Same over here. One is with red, the other one is blue, and the third one is with green. Okay. Even though the data, even though these whatever result that my models have generated, those predictions are not far away from each other. They are closer to each other, correct? But they are these data points, these predictions are actually far away from the actual data values, actual training values. Again, why this is happening, we all know. We have chosen very simplest model. Okay, suppose this red point is the model prediction which is generated by the model, and these are the data points which have been for which my model has generated this red prediction line. So in that particular case, I can easily say that though it is far away from my actual data point. Okay, my prediction line has given prediction with some error rate, right? That means it is not same as my predicted one. My true results are still far away from the actual result. But when you have chosen three different sample set, when you have chosen these three lines has been generated by the model, then you can analyze these three are closer to each other, correct? This is what I wanted to show you in this slide. Whereas in the previous case, the three lines were generated. These green lines are indicating the points which are the lines which are generated by the simple model on three different data set. Okay, now you can see the curve, the yellow curve. Okay, actually there are three different curves. One is One is this one, the other one is this one, and the third one is this one. Correct? So how it has generated? The first one has generated on some 10 data points. The second one has generated on 10 data points, and the third one has generated on 10 data points. Correct? Now you can see the data points haven't shown on this graph, but they are very in the previous graph we have seen how close my data points are with the predicted one. Okay, for example, in this graph, how close entirely my predicted value is predicted graph is moving over the entire data set. That means at least for this example there it is giving me good accuracy. Correct? That means zero error. Fine. For this, for example, for this particular data point, if I see my y is this, my y is this for the first point, whereas my predicted also gives the same y value, hence zero error. Correct? Similarly for the second and third and so on. Like that, we have trained the model on 3 different data set. 10 data items of first data set, 10 item of second data set, and 10 item of the third data set. And all these data items have been drawn from the same distribution. So in that particular case, I can say we are getting 3 different curves. One is trained on these data points. The second one is trained on these data points. Similarly, the third one is trained on these data points. Correct? Now I can say, you can even visually check it. Even though, suppose I have trained for these data points. Okay, I trained my model, first model on this particular data set, and it is giving us good accuracy. There is no loss at all. And I have drawn for next set of data items like this. Again, there is no loss. Again, there is no loss for the third as well, because it is able to train on very well on my trained data set, on my data set which is being trained. Whereas in the previous case, simple case, my actual values were different than the actual values were different than the predicted values. There was high error. Whereas here, it has my model has predicted it entirely correct result. Okay, whatever was the true value, it was correctly predicted it. Hence, there is a zero error in case of complex model. But you can check, okay, for this particular data item. Suppose for this particular data item, or let us take for this particular data item. For this particular data item, you can check one curve is going like this. The other curve has moved up, whereas the third is intermediate. That means the model which is generating the predictions for different data sets, they, unlike previously, they were same, right? They were very near to each other. Whereas here you can see the 3 different values are different. Okay. Similarly for this data item, suppose for this particular data item, this is for this particular value, this is giving this is generating this value, whereas this particular graph is generating this. Correct? That means it is generating different predictions for the given sample. Okay. Now let us go ahead. I do have few more slides to discuss. So whatever discussion that we have done in few of the previous slides, okay, with respect to simple model, what are we trying to do? With respect to complex model, what are we trying to do? When we train using 3 different set of samples in simple model, we can observe from the graph that all three models are almost similar to each other. Correct? These three were almost similar to each other, even though we have trained on different data items. Similarly, in complex also we have trained on three different samples. Okay, they are closer to each other, but each individual values or graphs lines that we are getting from three different models, okay, trained models on three different data set, they are similar to each other. That means they are very closer to each other. Even in graph you can see they are very closer, okay, as but they are very farther away from the data points, actual data points. You can see for blue line, I have blue line is the one which has given the prediction for these data points, and you can see the actual the predicted value is further away from the actual value. Okay, so this, but it is further away from the actual data points. Whereas in complex model, when we train using three different set of samples, we can observe from the figure or graph that all three models are vary from each other. That means they are not similar, they are totally dissimilar. Okay, we have seen this. Okay, this is having lowest value, this is giving the highest value, and this is giving the moderate value for the same data items. Correct, same sample. But when you check with respect to their own data items which we have trained, so they are actually closer to the closer, right? True value was closer to the predicted value. So let us now try to understand what is bias. The bias is how much expected value varies from the correct value. Correct is nothing but the true value. That means I do have two functions. One is f of x. Okay, f of x is my true one, the actual function with which I got y. Y is equals to f of x, right? F of x is one which I got the true model, and because I don't know what is exactly f is, so I try to estimate f based on some parameter, that is f, and I get f hat. Okay, and this f hat I try to get or I try to predict f hat is closer to f, right? So we do have two different models. One is f of x, the original function, which we do not know, which we actually will not be knowing for any given data items. If we know, then no need to, if we know the original function, then no need of doing any kind of building the model. Okay, because you simply pass the values, you will that particular function pass the value and you get the result. But we don't know what is actual f is. Hence, we try to predict it, right? So like this, I do have my true as well as my predicted or estimated model. So I need to compute the bias. Bias for the estimated value can be computed with the help of the average of the expected one minus f of x. Getting it? The average of f hat of x is nothing but, okay, this expected of f hat of x is nothing but average value of the model. F hat itself is indicating the predicted one. Okay, that is why in this example, in this particular example, we have taken three different, we have used that example. No? One, the first one is resultant of on after training 10 points. The second one is resultant after training 10, next 10 points. And the third one is result of after taking 10 points. Okay. And I will, what I will take is, I will take average of all these three. This is what that means. Expectation is nothing but the on an average, it is average value of the model. Average value of the model minus my f of x. Average value of the predicted one minus f of x. So for simple model, the average value is very far from the f of x. We all know, correct? For simple model, you can see, if you take average of these three lines, if you take average of these three lines, it comes out to be, maybe some line like this, right? So you check this average is average of expected, that is average of the, or expectation of the uh, estimated value or the predicted value, right? So this value is further away from this. This is actual value f of x, whereas what you get is over here. Fine. That is why we are saying for simple model, average value is very far from the fx, true one. Whereas for complex model, the average value is similar to f of x. Hence, you may have heard this saying this by many authors or researchers who are working in deep learning. They do simply say that simple model has high bias and complex model has low bias. Okay, why high bias and why low bias? Because the average value is very far from the f of x, whereas here average value is similar or very close to f of x. Okay, it may not be exactly fx, but it is very close to fx, right? Hence, we do say for simple, we do have high bias, whereas for complex model, we do have low bias. Whereas the variance can be computed with this particular formula. That means average of f hat of x minus all average points of f hat of x. Okay, so this means how three different models differ from each other. Okay, it is saying the same thing, right? Fine. So how these three differ from each other? How, first what I will try to do is, suppose I don't have any slide which is blank. Let me create a blank one and let me explain. Sorry. Suppose we have trained and we got the first, for simple, we got these three result. Okay, so what I will do is I will compute the average. Fine, I will compute the average, and average of these three lines will be near to this only, correct? Near to this. Now I will see how this first one differ with average, how this second one will differ with the average, and how this third one will differ with average. Okay, that is what the variance means. Okay, that is what the variance means. How three different models differ from one another. Okay, in simple model, it gives me low variance, whereas in complex model, it gives the high variance. What is that? What do you mean by low variance and high variance? You can see here, these three are closer to each other. Okay, when you take average and when you compute the variance, how deviated the first line with the average, how deviated the second line with the average, how deviated the third line with the average. Okay, so more or less you will get very less variance. Okay, whereas here, because one is for same data items, this one is, if you take average, you may get again some kind of average. You'll get some kind of average, but when you compute, when you compute the variance, because for the same data point, one is going high, the other curve is giving less, low value, and the third one is moderate. Similarly over here, one is giving high, the other one is low, and so on, right? So variance of these three are very high. That is, variance of the complex model is very high. So that is why we need to choose the model. Model complexity is very important, right? If you choose the low variance, we know, low complexity, that is simple model, we have seen with a simple model only that line for a given set of data points, simple line with a given data points. That is, I'm considering this. I'm considering this. Very simple line, simplest model I'm considering for a given data sets. But you can see the average error is going to be very high, right? So when you go for a simple model, you will get high bias, correct? High bias, and even it occurs, underfitting will occurs. Whereas if you choose the highest model complexity, if you choose the largest complexity, okay, model complexity, then you can see overfitting problem occurs. Okay, that means high variance will come. So for that sake, you must always choose the one which is not too simple, not too high. Okay, in overfitting, what is the problem? We have seen in overfitting, the problem here is, even though training with each iteration you move, the training error is going to decrease, but test error with each iteration, it will decrease to some extent, but it will try to will increase stepwise. Okay, it will not actually, the problem here is for the given model, with each step, the training error as well as testing error should reduce. Okay, but for too complex model, as I said, it overly learns the data items such that training error will be low. Maybe it approaches to zero with few more like too much complexity, but my test error will be too high, right? So we always try to choose the one which gives us the best value. That means minimum training error as well as minimum test error. Okay, this again some example of underfitting, balanced and overfitting. These are the few references that I have referred. So I will stop here. Sakshi?
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
audible? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Sakshi, I think 2 or 3 more topics need to be covered with respect to like for first practical session. But right, so what we can do is we will start with few examples. Maybe tomorrow we will plan the practical session, and day after also we will plan the practical session, and I will try to cover like once they do hands-on, they will also understand the concept of whatever we have discussed till now, and I need to move ahead with some more concept, like how do I reduce the overfitting. Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
fine. So let us let them do some hands-on next 2 days, and later on we will
Okay, ma'am.
continue.
Okay, ma'am. Sure.
Any doubts I can take now?
So, anyone having any doubt? Any doubts, anyone? I don't think there are doubts then, because nobody is speaking up for doubts.
Okay, Sakshi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sakshi ma'am, can we get these PPTs? Is it possible?
Okay, let me discuss, and later on I will let you know.
Right.
So I'll be uploading the attendance link in a minute or two. Just stay here. I'll be uploading the attendance link. So I'll upload the attendance link in the group in the chat window only of your WhatsApp group today. Will that be fine with everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll upload the attendance link
Hmm.
in the WhatsApp group only. Okay?
Chat window, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Only say hello. Hello.
Hello? Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Please send the attendance link in chat window, ma'am.
You want that in WebEx only?
Yes, ma'am.
Is WebEx only or should I send in WhatsApp?
Ma'am, on chat window, ma'am. And then
Okay, just wait for a few times and you need to wait. I'll upload it.
okay, ma'am. Okay. Thank you.
Just wait on, I'll upload it. Okay, just wait it.